Doll is here. Luis is here. Haley is here. I'm trying. When I taught high school, so I'm really bad with names. When I taught high school, I called all my students sir and ma'am, and they loved it, and I didn't have to learn their names. And then I didn't have to learn their names, and so then some kids went like 8 months, and I was still like, Ryan, Dave. It was bad. Is Ian here? I shouldn't start taking attendance yet. There's like 7 of you here. I'll wait. Ben Garvey, good morning. All right, it is technically 9, but there's not enough people on the stream yet, so we're going to wait just another couple minutes. See if anybody else shows up. To save time, though, will you tell me your names? I'm sorry? Your Fortune? Okay, cool. Thank you. Fortune. There you are. I've got you. Got you. You, sir, in the front. Alessandro, thank you. And you? Graham. What's your last name, Graham? Oh, there it is. Thank you, thank you. And you in the back? Thank you. I think that's everybody. Oh, no, except for you. John, thank you. Artem and John. What's up? Are you Mason? Okay, I'm starting to get them. Okay. What's your name, sir? You just walked in? Ben. You're Ben? Okay, cool. Ah, look at this. This is where our people are. All right, who just walked in? Ben just walked in. Matt. And what's your name? Kyle. Thank you. Cool. All right, we definitely have enough to start now. Ben, what's your last name? Thank you. Okay, only thing you will need today is your notebook and like your thinking cap. Today we are going to do some stream of consciousness writing. Does anybody here know has anybody here had to do stream of consciousness writing before? Okay, not many of us. That is fine. Does everybody here know what stream of consciousness writing is? Lukewarm. Okay. Stream of consciousness writing is essentially when it's similar to what we did Friday and Wednesday in that, hello, what's your name? Who just walked in? Peter, thank you. It's similar to what we did on those days, but instead of me like asking you a specific question, I'm going to tell you nothing, and you are going to write literally whatever comes to your mind. So even if what comes to your mind is, there's nothing in my mind, you just write, there's nothing in my mind. The only thing in your head is like, fuck, I got nothing, like, just write it. It's cool. And we're going to do this for a few minutes as a sort of experiment. And I'm going to jump from that straight into the reading, because the reading, I think, helps me explain this a little bit. So today, our poem is by a guy named Matt Zapruder. This is from a book called Come On, All You Ghosts. It's fucking awesome. It's one of my favorite books. And it makes a reference to a poet that you don't need to have ever read before in the title. The poem is called, and then it moves right into the first line. You'll see what I mean. This poem is called, After Reading Tufu, I Emerge from a Cloud of Falseness. So, after reading Tufu, I emerge from a cloud of falseness, wearing a suit of light. It's too easy to be strange. I glow, reading a few pages of an ancient Chinese poet to calm me, but soon I am traveling down terrible roads like an insect chased by golden armies. Then I am tired in a little boat filling with smoke. Then, in the seasonably cold morning, I am once again missing my friends. Some have been sent to the capital to take their exams or work for a while and be slowly executed. I cannot help them. I am trying to build a straw hut beside the transparent river. The sky is a perfect black dome with stars that look white but are actually slightly blue. I have 2 precious candles to last me a night that has suddenly come. I feel the lives of cities drift through me. I am a beautiful scroll on which the history of a dynasty has been written in a dead language not even one lonely scholar knows. I see sad, crushed plastic everywhere and put some thoughts composed of words that do not belong together, and feel a little digital hope. Okay, so I like this poem. One of the reasons I really like this poem is because of its weird, unexpected imagery, which still manages to feel like appropriate to the moment. This is like the fear of being an insect, chased by golden armies, the 2 precious candles for a night that's suddenly come, right? The boat filling with smoke. All of these things communicate this kind of mood of desperation, of being pursued, of things not lasting, even though they're not rooted in any specific situation or any specific location. Matt Zapruder zips all over the place, and yet we're always tethered to his mind or to the mood. Hello, what's your name, sir?
Max O'Malley.
Thank you. So this is today why we're going to be doing some stream of consciousness type work. Sometimes we can feel like we are total mysteries to ourselves. And the idea of unbridling our minds can feel stupid, intimidating, or even scary. But what you learn over time is that there's only so much stuff in there, and that it is, in fact, scrutable. It's possible that Zapruder, for example, took all these images and he wrote them down in just like a blind creative spasm. And it was only later that he realized that all these worries that were being reflected were actually kind of cohesive, and they kind of had the same mood. And then maybe he put them together in a poem, right? So take me, for example. As you know, I talked before, I love writing fiction. I'm trying to do it all the time. And one of my favorite things to do over the years has been to sit down with a blank page, no rules, no idea, just go, just like start, just like see what happens, right? Throw a character into a situation and treat it as an experiment. And so I've done this quite a few times over the years, because times when you don't have ideas are actually pretty frequent. And I've noticed some tendencies within this practice that are very interesting to me. So, for example, almost all of my protagonists are males. Well, that one makes sense. I myself am male, and I have a lot of hesitation about like communicating the female experience, because obviously that's not mine. So that one just like makes sense. But I've noticed some other ones that aren't as easy to explain, and that I've had to think about. Things that I kind of gravitate toward. For example, when I do this thing, when I'm like, all right, blank slate, where are you going to go, Neil? I end up in a parking lot a lot. Like a lot of my stories start in a parking lot, with characters either entering places of commerce or returning to their vehicles with their objects after they've entered a place of commerce. Gas stations, grocery stores, stuff like that are often places where my stories find themselves beginning. I've even had friends comment on it, like, oh, here's Neil, he's putting another story in a parking lot. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this is interesting now. And so I find it interesting specifically because my favorite thing in the world is nature. Like, where I want to be is hundreds of miles from here, camping, right? And I lost my place. And a gas station parking lot seems like kind of the opposite of everything I love. Like, it's transactional, it's dirty, it's filled with all these weird bright colors, it's trying to sell me shit. Like, nothing about this feels right to me. But what I think I've come to realize is that it's interesting or striking or challenging for me to go into a place that I find so discomforting, like a hub of late capitalism. And as the semester progresses, you're just going to learn I have some serious fucking beef with capitalism. But to go into a hub of capitalism and try to explore or extract something human and profound out of that space. So in a sense, when I for example, I place two characters who are teetering on the edge of a breakup and they're going to hash it out right then and there, and I put them in a gas station parking lot. I think what I'm trying to do is find some kind of it's like a beauty and ugliness type thing. And when I say that to myself, when I finally get there, I think, oh, that feels true. That feels right. It feels like something I would do. And so I've made a little bit more sense to myself just by noticing the different details that pop up. Now, of course, today, this is our first shot at this, and I'm not going to be asking you to write fiction. But I think the example highlights that in a mind, when you tell yourself, okay, no limits, dude, you're still going to find yourself circling back to certain places, certain people, certain topics, certain styles, certain moods. These are all things that you already have access to, and we're just going to increase your access to them over the course of the semester. That's how you develop style. So today, we're just going to take the first few pokes at it and, in a sense, notice what we notice. So to that end, we're doing stream of consciousness work. This is somewhat different from what we did last week in that I'm not going to be asking you direct questions, and there's no specific direction in which I want you to go. One thing that we'll be working on today is, and kind of over the course of the semester really, is how to turn off the judgmental voice, the editor voice, the one that says, don't say that. The one that's well, you're not ready for that, or you're not good enough, or whatever the fuck your editor says, right? We've all got one. And this voice is useful. It's very useful, and it protects us all the time, day to day. But it shouldn't have the mic all the time. That's counter to creativity. And stream of consciousness writing is a good way of interacting with it. So in Self-Doubt, the reading for today, the essayist invites you to catalog all your doubts and worries along with your motivations for writing poetry. And since this is a class setting, and because I'm making you write the poetry, we're going to take a slightly different approach. So in trying to write totally uninhibited, we're kind of baiting our inner censor, our inner editor, into saying something so that we can tell it more explicitly. No, Doug, it's not your turn. So we shut up our editor not by repressing it, because that never works, but by giving another voice the mic for a while. Okay, so with that, we should begin. I want you to write anything and everything that comes to mind. I have extra notebooks up here as well if anybody needs them. Anything and everything that comes to mind. If you run out of things to say, then you write, I have no things to say. If all you're thinking is fuck, 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 shit, just write that. No one's going to judge you, right? I'm not reading your notebooks. What you will find, I think, is that these moments of hesitation are just speed bumps. And that if you're honest and patient with yourself, you can write over them, and then you continue on to something else. All right, I'm setting the timer. And I will see you in about 10 minutes. 4.5 minutes left. About a minute left. Okay. Okay, so now I kind of want to hear from you. What was hard about that? What was easy about that? Did you discover anything or surprise yourself in any way? Talk to me. Mason.
Easy to be just so humble
Mm-hmm.
Once you kind of found an idea and liked it, you could stick to it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that surprised me when you were talking about the gas station,
Yeah.
it made me kind of stop and think. I'm like, do I do that with anything? I look back and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff actually. I started writing that out, figuring out why that was.
Like stuff that you're interested in?
Well, like, why I keep coming back to certain themes, certain
Mm-hmm.
generic shells of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's really only so much each person can explore, I feel like. And you get kind of, your experience broadens you, but it also kind of limits you in a certain way, in that way. Yeah, okay, very cool, thank you. Anybody else? Wait, don't tell me. Artem.
Yes.
Sick, okay.
I realized that I started regurgitating basically snippets of everything I've read in the last 4 weeks.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's like a hodgepodge of like 4 different authors.
Okay, so you mean like literary type writing or fiction? And do you mean fiction?
Things that
Or do you mean like emails?
To text, like,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Can you say that again?
things that I think are clever references, like I don't know, one word allusions or whatever.
Ah, I see. Okay, so you're kind of like a mashup of just like stuff you've experienced lately.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that's all we ever are. Who else? Talk to me. I don't remember your name. Alessandro, thank you.
I found it hard to like kind of stay on a topic. Like I started and I found something that I liked, but like I felt my mind slowly being like, no, do this now. And I was like, but I want to stay and write more about this. And so kind of like I was pulling two different things a little bit.
I had something similar happen to me. I had something similar happen to me while I was writing. I did this in the last class that I was teaching too a couple minutes ago. And I was writing about something, and then very suddenly, this like a Vine that I watched like 2 months ago just like popped into my head, and I was annoyed because it wasn't a good Vine. It was cringeworthy. I remember, and I had no interest in describing it. And then I felt like, well, now it's here, and then I had to write a bracket and then just like describe this lame Vine that I watched, and then finally go back to the thing I was trying to talk about. And it ended up making me really curious about why those things were connected. I don't have a good answer at all. I have no idea why that just like popped up into my head. Ooh, that made your hand go up. Talk to me.
So I forget who exactly had mentioned it, but the mention about sort of regurgitating some of the things you'd previously seen.
Yeah.
Remind me a little bit of some of what I was doing, because I kind of just started beginning to dissect a little bit of a game I've been playing a ton of lately. So I just was sort of using some I realize now in retrospect that I was using some sort of similar language and touching on a few things, that some different video essays about different aspects and sort of topics of game design that I'd seen as of late. And I had been sort of, well, I partially realized it at the time, but in retrospect, I definitely realized that I was talking about some of the very same subjects, or at least using similar language to what those types of videos would have used.
Yeah, the language difference is really interesting to me, and we'll talk more about this too, but like when you put a certain book in your mind, for example, or even a certain movie or video game, whatever piece of art it is, it can have a real effect on your tone if you just sit for a couple seconds and say, this is the thing I'm thinking about now. Like you can notice wild switches in your own tone. I just played Firewatch through for the first time. Has anybody played Firewatch before? Awesome game, very plot heavy walking simulator, which is exactly the kind of game I love. And I've noticed it have an effect on the stuff I'm thinking about. You know, it's a very like you're walking through the woods, but you're thinking about your family history type game. And it's definitely had an effect on the way I've been thinking lately. So my other question for the team is, what did your editor voice sound like? And did you notice your editor leaping up and saying no to specific things? And can you identify any commonalities within those things? It's a hard question. Haley.
So I guess for me, my editor voice would like come in once in a while when I, like for a section, I wasn't writing sentences at all, just like 2 or 3 words, and then I switched to a different idea.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll come back to like, I'm not writing incomplete sentences, and then I try to, but then I would like, not, I guess, I don't know.
Did you find yourself writing the voice of the editor at all? Or was that in your head and the page was different?
I mean, I wrote like once or twice, I'm not writing incomplete sentences, but then I kind of stopped,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
Okay, cool. A very similar thing happened in the other class too. And I think it's worth saying, like, I said it in the other class too, like, how do I want to say this? How did I say it? Like less than a half hour ago. Well, when you have this editor that pops up and like really wants to say like, you're doing it wrong, right? It's a good idea sometimes to let that editor, while you're writing, to let that editor just have the mic for a second and write the thing that your editor is saying. Because I think what we find most of the time is that if we give our editor the mic for a little bit too long, it reaches a certain point where, it's giving you valid criticisms at one point, or they're kind of valid criticisms in disguise, or disguised as valid criticisms. And then at a certain point, your editor is just like, but also you're just like generally lame. Like your editor at a certain point just like kind of runs out of stuff, and then all that's left is the mood, and then it's like, and then it just says some mean shit. It's an interesting line to parse when exactly, it's a really weird thing. Like it's already a facet of my mind, and then when is it doing this one thing, and when is it doing this other thing? And can I get it to do something that favors me in any given situation? It's a tough thing to interact. It's very, very slippery too. Okay. Thank you for indulging me. We're going to do this one more time, but we're going to do it slightly differently this time. So I said earlier, we're going to do poems in this class because poems are language minus rules. And I dig that. I stand by that. And so today I want to do a little bit of experimenting with this. So what I want us to do, we're going to do the same thing as last time, 10 minutes of stream of consciousness writing. But we're going to incorporate something new. And that new thing is white space. What I mean by this is I want you to acknowledge for a moment that the page is actually a pretty dynamic object. And we forget sometimes when we're writing on white space that the page is not just background, but it's actually its own kind of foreground, or it can be. It too can be something we use. So for example, oh my God, there's a million examples in here. So this is regular text, right? I've just been writing. I fill up the page. I go from left to right. I go up to down. But then you notice sometimes things must be arranged. I drew a little box around this one because I thought it was important and I didn't want other words in there, right? That demarcates something. That means something. Here I wrote a list. Lists are important, right? It wouldn't benefit me to go back in and fill up this white space with more words. That's not the point. The white space is the point somehow, right? Or I drew a little, where did it go? I know you're in here. I drew a little graph here. I drew a line with some ideas inside of it. This was very helpful to me earlier today when I was sorting things out. Here is a T-chart, right? These are all important arrangements of white space. Point being, white space is more than just blankness. It is the other half of the page in a sense. So we're gonna fuck with this a little. So when you're writing, as you're doing the stream of consciousness thing again, and you feel yourself take a breath, or in the middle of your sentence when it feels like if you were speaking, you might take a pause of any kind, a breath or a pause. Stop writing on that line, skip to the next line. Let the white space just chill there. It doesn't matter if you've only written one word on that line. That's fine. But the point is to invite some of this white space to mix in to your writing. Also perfectly appropriate is if you're writing and you find yourself at one of these pause moments and you find you just want to like put the word over here for a moment. That's totally kosher too. The point of this is that line breaks and white space can be monstrously technical and finicky things. I have literally read essays about white space. I'm not sure how useful that is, honestly. But before we can do before we can have any kind of like mastery of white space, the first thing to do is just to foster like a sense of intuition about it. These moments where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. There we go, line break. There we go. Let's throw this word over here, and just like see how it feels. So if you find that your lines are still pretty long and conversational, that's totally fine. And if you find you're making really frequent line breaks and your whole thing's really broken up and it skips really, and when you read it, it like your eye just like flies down the page, that's cool too. The point is to try it out and see how it feels. Okay, let's give it a go. I will see you in 10 minutes. 2 minutes left. About 10 seconds. Okay. Thank you. So my question for you now is, were there any differences that you noticed between the first writing session and the second one? And these can be differences in matter. My subject matter was definitely different. But also differences in the tone of the writing itself, or just in the mood of the sense, the feeling that you had, that you were getting and generating while you were writing. Mace.
Definitely a lot more carefree, a lot more just kind of like write what you want and get bored and you can move on and try again.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. So it was easier to just like kind of hop from thing to thing.
Relax.
Cool. That's the total opposite experience for me. That's interesting. I was much more locked onto a single thing while I was doing the line breaks. Graham.
Yeah, I was sort of the same way. Like in my first writing piece, I sort of stuck to one idea the whole way. But in this one, like, I skipped around and I found my writing style was like completely different from my first one.
Oh, very, very cool. Very, very cool. John.
I had like sentences that were ideas
Uh-huh.
that followed with each other, and then I switched, and then I wrote longer ones, but still like had more of an idea than what I had previously.
You had more of an idea, you said?
Yeah.
Can you expand on that at all?
Well, like my first section, I wrote like 2 parts to it. It was like really short sentences that like made sense because I just needed something down.
Uh-huh.
And then my second one, I thought about what I wanted to say a little bit more, so I was able to expand on my thought, making it a couple lines, and then leaving a space.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Having a big idea helps too, or like a long idea when you know it's going to take a couple seconds to get. Yeah. Trying to remember your name, and I can't. Tell me. Matt, thank you.
I could tell you exactly what I wrote for my first thing. I have no idea what I just wrote. I'm looking at this. None of this makes sense.
Sick.
On the first one, at the end of every sentence, my editor part of my brain wanted me to rhyme, so I just didn't do that at all. Unless my first one rhymed like every 2 lines. Doesn't make sense. Not at all.
Oh, fun. That's it. Wait, so your editor wanted you to rhyme, and so you purposefully didn't rhyme?
Yeah.
Okay, I dig. Damn, I already asked you your name and I've already forgotten it again.
It's Max.
Max, thank you.
I found that my sort of writing got much more, I guess the way I could put it, like adrift. I felt like I was a lot more analytical, I guess I could say, during my first one, or at least a lot more explicitly so. Whereas this one, I was sort of just, I was still in the same sort of subject because I'm still talking about stuff on praying, but I'm more so just like throwing a specific idea down and kind of just, I guess the best way to put it is think of like a dialogue with myself in terms of figuring out what you could potentially do with it.
Uh-huh. So it sounds like in general we had like a more, that the first one was more like journaling and then the second one was a little bit more playful, if that's fair to say. Haley.
I found like the opposite for me. Like the first one, like looking back at it, like doesn't make sense. And like they're both like my faults, obviously, but like the first one kind of jumps around more, and the second one is like they make sense going from one thing to another. Because like how you started explaining, I started thinking about that, trying to think of similar things, and like I know personally, this is how I organize like my sketchbook with like the spaces in between, and I found myself like my more of an editor voice with this, forcing myself to put a line in between, and I kind of realized at the end, I like kind of more like a list where it's over a bit, but I don't know.
Oh, interesting. I also found, I think I might have said this already, but I also found that when I did the line breaks, I really stuck to one idea. And for me, I think I got bored with just like writing all the way across the page. And so I'd think of some other thing and be like, all right, we're going to that. And then start writing about that for a minute. Okay, thank you. This was our very first foray into using line breaks. And I always find that instead of like trying to tell you why a poet makes a decision about a line break, like, Jesus, that sounds impossible. So just getting you to do it instead is the best sort of intro I can give. That is the gist of today. I don't think there's any announcements for us. We don't have any readings to do or anything right now. Are there any questions for me right now? I'll stick around for a minute after class too. No? Then you guys can get out of here and I will see you on Wednesday.